Welcome back, guys. So, after a considerable amount of hard work and an equally considerably large amount of patience, we've made a massive amount of progress in the trailer build for this overall project. And I have completed the 10 individual wheel stations along with all the hydraulic pneumatic lining that needs to be put in. So the bulk of that was included in steps 10 and 11, although 11 gives you all the correct lengths for the line. You get an idea of the smaller ancillary parts that are needed to be attached to hold the line in place, and the photo etch, and so on and so forth. So it's taken me literally probably about a week on and off through the nights to get this done. On average, I was managing about 2 to 3 wheel stations a night, due just to the amount of work you're needing to do, cutting, bending, gluing, affixing, and so on. So moving on from here, then you've got steps 11 and 12. Now 11 is basically constructing the wheels and the brake systems, the brake drums. So what I've done, because obviously we need to paint, and I'll show you this when we look at it, we need to paint the underside chassis, wheel stations, hydraulic lines, etc. before we put the wheels on, and before we put the steering control arms on, which I'll get onto next. So where I've gotten to in the build is that I'm going to off camera complete the wheels, because we looked at how they went together with the spare wheels and the gooseneck. So that'll be off camera. There's 40 wheels to do. It's going to take me a little time, and I really don't think you guys want to watch me making 40 wheels. I have made a couple of pairs just to see how we get on. They're in my storage container, and that's what you end up with. You just end up with what I call doubles. So double axle wheels there. Throw it away. They have nice detail. Sorry, just saved that one from the dog eating it. So they've got nice lug nut detail in there. They go together very well, and they're very strong once they're built. So need to do 40 wheels and 20 pairs. So it's a bit of work, but we'll get it done. And then the other thing that I have actually done is I've built up the brake hub assembly and the brake actuating lever that goes onto the brake actuator air cylinder. You can, and it is designed for the hub to be movable, and some of mine are, but on the whole I just glued it with a mixture of Revell contactor for the shaft joint and Tamiya extra thin for the back plate to hub. And some of them bound up, some of them didn't. Doesn't really matter. For me, I'm not going to be rolling it around, so they don't need to be movable, but if you wanted to, you can make them movable. So you need to take a little bit of care to make sure that your brake chamber is in the right orientation on its bracket to then marry up with the brake actuation lever, which marries up to the two reciprocating holes in the brake back plates. I'll show you when we flip this over, but it took a little bit of jiggery pokery with some of them. And when you build, as I did, the 10 wheel stations first, and then I lined the wheel stations with the lead lining for the hydraulic pneumatic lining. It over the time, then obviously the brake chamber is well cured, and if it's slightly out of a line, then it can cause a little bit of problems getting this whole brake chamber assembly together. So I'll just zoom in if I can, just so you get a, yeah, so we're talking about this assembly here. So they did all go together reasonably well. The main thing is to make sure that they're all in alignment, and as you look at the axles, they all look the same. So the brake chambers are basically in the same position for each axle. Are you ever going to see them? Probably not. Are you ever going to see half the work you do on this thing? Probably not, but you know it's there and you know it's right. And if you look at reference photos, then actually you can see these cables underneath the trailer unit. So they are a prominent feature and they are worth doing correctly. Right. So moving on from part 12, we then go on to part 13. Now part 13 you will see, I'll zoom out a bit because I've not got enough in frame. There we go. And down. So step 13 then is putting the steering control arms, because obviously these are independent movable wheel stations. Then it's to put the steering control arms from the wheel station into the central control mechanism that we built. And for the rearmost 4 sets of axles, so from here and back, that, well, no, I should say that isn't a problem. It is a problem. I'll retract that word. It shouldn't be a problem if these were all movable parts, but they're not. They are just designed to be glued in place, so there's no ability for them to swivel. So basically when you put these parts on, then they're glued solid. That's it, game over. Now if you did that before you put your wheels on to paint it, you won't be able to move the axle. You won't be able to get those inner road wheels on. You might be able to do it if you build them in singles, but if you put them together in the instructions that want you to do it and build them in doubles, you want to be able to get the wheel on between the hub end and the center spine shaft of the trailer. Spine chassis of the trailer, sorry. So hence why I've left all my axle units movable. But in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, everyone's entitled to build this how they like, it's far more sensible to get the wheel stations and all the piping work done and in place to paint as a whole, rather than trying to do it separate and then glue them on after. But if that's the way you want to do it, that's entirely up to you. But I opted to get it all put together and then we'll paint over it. And if you look at reference photos, then all this hydraulic pneumatic lining is all painted sand color. It all gets oversprayed, so they don't clean up like mask off hoses and stuff like that. They just hose the paint on, so everything gets a good covering. And realistically, when they're running these things on the roads and dusty environments, everything's going to get a good coating of dust underneath as well. So once you get the steering control arms in place, then the call out is to glue the gooseneck onto the trailer deck. So what I've done is I've obviously cut the control arms out, cleaned them for this side, and it's mirrored for the other side, and I've just taped them in place for the order they're to go, and we'll put them on once we've actually got the bulk of the painting done and the wheels on, and then we can come back in and touch these arms in and it'll all be sorted. Right, so the next job to do, part 14, which is tantalizingly close to the finish of this, because there is only, what is there? So there's 22 steps, and step 22 is putting the trailer onto the tractor unit. So there's 21 steps. So part 14, another 7 steps, if my math serves me right, is, wait for it, more hydraulic pneumatic lining. Oh, happy days. This one is calling out for a larger diameter line. So we've got pneumatic line, hydraulic line, sorry, from the gooseneck cylinders, adjuster cylinders, down to the center chassis rail, connecting into probably the hydraulic steering mechanism. And then that's 1 mil ducting, they're calling it. So that's 1 mil lead line, which I've got. And then there are plastic parts to go on. So it's R35, 36, 25, 46, 41, and 37. So those lines need to go on. And then finally, we've got more hydraulic ducting going to these, I don't know if they're accumulators or something here on the front of the trailer. So that needs to go on. And looking at it, it needs to go on in the order it's displayed, because each set of cables go over the next set of cables, if that makes sense. So that's step 14, and that's what I'm going to get onto next. But after step 14, then we start getting on to completing landing legs. We've got under trailer stores, and we've got the beginnings of axle chock locating racks, as well as front marker light holding brackets. So that's really starting to fill out the detail on the trailer. Part 15 is a repeat of the opposite side, so landing legs, marker lights, wheel chock, alignment racks. You've got the rear mud flaps to go on, some tools and some more rear marker lights, and then part 18 is the loading ramps to go on. Yeah, part 19 is photo etch parts to go on the deck. Part 20 is track alignment markers going down. And then part 21 is finishing up with the chocks, vehicle chocks, which we're going to use for the cargo load that we're putting on this, so we won't actually fix the vehicle chocks fully in place, certainly the rear ones anyway, possibly the front ones, until we get the Abrams made up so we can get it all in correct alignment. So we are actually pressing on quite well, and we're getting through the bulk. We've certainly gotten through the bulk of the build. So let's actually have a look at what I have built. Okay, so the trailer. Well, obviously the first big thing you can see is we've got the gooseneck fixed onto the trailer. Trailer deck's looking rather nice. And then if we turn it over, we've got the 10 independent wheel stations and all the associated piping with them. They're all movable, and with it being lead piping, then it's not a problem. And we'll be able to shift them around 90 degrees to get that inside wheels onto the axle, and then just put them back around. We should be able to do that once we've painted it, which is really, really good. Right, if we look under the swallow neck, then the gooseneck, you've got this part here where the joint is, and that was the only gap I've had in the whole build. About a 0.5 mm gap here. I just filled that with some stretch sprue, plenty of Tamiya extra thin, and let it cure up overnight, and then just sanded flush. There was a corresponding smaller gap here, just at the front of the joint between the trailer deck and the gooseneck, and that was filled just exactly the same way. But other than that, the actual fixing of the gooseneck was no problem whatsoever. Good strong joint, and it should, just with a combination of Revell contactor and Tamiya extra thin, it was sorted out. Obviously we maintain the articulation in the gooseneck, and we need that until we get the loading of the trailer onto the, when it's hitched onto the tractor unit, so we can get the correct angle the gooseneck would sit at naturally. And then obviously once we've done that, we can place the photo etch back in underneath the top steps for the crew access to the spare wheels and such like. So that's where we've gotten. Really quite happy how we've gotten on with it, and the level of detail is really, really nice. So the next thing to do is to, as I say, get on to doing the final hydraulic lines, or should I say hydraulic pneumatic lines, jointing the systems on the gooseneck to the systems on the trailer deck itself. So I'll get all the associated cables, and cause we've got the plastic parts and the lead wire cut ready to go. What I'll probably do is I might put it all in place and come back and look after, because you've seen me do lots of lead wire and it's going to be exactly the same. It'll be interesting to see how the plastic components fit to the trailer. So I'll start with that, and then we'll come back and see how I've gotten on. So see you shortly. Right, we're back, and I have just pressed on because I thought it would be a lot easier than trying to get camera angles and that, and it is just doing exactly the same as I've done on the wheel stations with the lead wire. So that's 1mm lead wire on the gooseneck joint. So that's taken all the hydraulics down from the gooseneck and into the chassis of the trailer, hydraulics and pneumatics. So it's just a bunch of there's 3 lead lines and 4 plastic parts. You can see the molded plastic parts in there, all going down, joining really nicely with the lines on the underside. So that's that section 14 completely done, which is really nice. So the next things to look at is the landing legs and such on section 16 and 17. So it's probably 2 sections we can do together. So what I might do is just call it quits on this video now that I've done this, and then I'll get all these parts made for both sides, and then we can just put it on at the same time, because it doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult to make these parts up. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back and look at getting the sort of final parts of photo etch to make the top of the deck done, and then that's it, ready for paint. Paint it, and then come back in and get the steering control arms in, get the wheels on, get the steering control arms in, and then we're looking at actually getting this thing mounted up on a base, because we'll be nearly at the point of certainly getting primary painting and initial weathering done, and then we can maybe even think of doing the bulk of the heavy dust weathering on this, the trailer and the tractor unit together, and then we can set it to one side and get on with the Abrams. So we are pushing on along really well, and the build is progressing, which is really good. So if there's any questions, comments, or anything you want to know about the build, please feel free to put the comments down below. And as I always say, if you like what you see and you want to support the channel, it doesn't cost anything to subscribe. If you do subscribe, remember to hit the bell notification to get reminded of my recent updates. So till next time, guys, stay safe and happy modeling.